Audio track 7.2.
Attain.
Cure.
Historically.
Hygiene.
Medical.
Norm.
Rub.
Straightforward.
Sweat.
Treat.
Audio track 7.3.
3,500 years of hygiene.
Historically, what is normal in terms of hygiene has changed a lot. And keeping yourself clean in the past often looked very different from what it does today. To give us more information, here are two historians who will discuss the topic of personal hygiene throughout history. First, Professor Sato talks about the ancient world.
We know that people were using soap in ancient Babylonia. What we don't know is what they used the soap for. One of the first places where we know people used soap for washing was ancient Egypt in North Africa around 1500 BCE. They also used soap to treat skin diseases. We know this from the Ebers Papyrus, which is an ancient Egyptian document with information on how to treat medical problems. It contains hundreds of different ways to cure health problems. But in other parts of the world, personal hygiene took very different forms. We know from writers of the time that in ancient Rome around 500 BCE, before they took a bath, people would cover their body in oil and rub dust into it. Then, they would do a lot of exercise to make themselves sweat. After that, they would use a small piece of metal called a strigil to remove the oil, dust, and sweat from their skin. Then they felt clean enough to get into the bath. Around the same time, as early as the pre-Qin period in China, people also took hygiene seriously. According to Wandi Neijing, a medical document that was written between 400 and 200 BCE, hygiene was necessary because it is more important to prevent illness than to cure the illness when it has arisen. Hence, one norm in ancient China was to bathe in rice water every 5 days, wash your hair every 3 days, and wash your hands 5 times a day.
Let's jump forward now to the 14th century CE and listen to Professor Bashar talk about hygiene in the Middle Ages and the early modern period.
In Western Europe, hygiene took a big step backwards around the 14th century. Terrible diseases were killing huge numbers of people, and doctors had no idea how to cure them. As a result, they came up with some strange theories, including blaming water. They noticed that water opened up the pores in the skin. The pores are the small holes in your skin that let you sweat. And they decided that open pores allowed bad air to get in. The solution was straightforward: don't wash. This idea lasted in Western Europe for around 500 years. According to historian Catherine Aschenberg, Women began to wear perfume around that time, not to make themselves smell nice, but to stop them noticing the smell of other people. In contrast, in Mexico and Central America, in the 15th and 16th centuries, visitors from other continents were taken aback by how clean the local people, the Aztecs, were. According to reports from the time, Montezuma II, the Aztec emperor, took a bath twice a day. And ordinary people washed in streams and rivers almost as often. The Florentine Codex, a document written at the time, refers to using the fruit of the soap tree for washing, as well as natural plant deodorants and breath fresheners. Across the ocean in Japan, public bathing was popular. The practice of bathing with others really took off during the Edo period, in the 17th to 19th centuries, that is from 1603 to 1867. Since most people in Japan did not have baths in their homes, the public bathhouse was a very useful development. Public bathhouses are known as sento. Records show that by 1810, sento were so popular that there were over 500 sento just in the city of Edo, as Tokyo was then known. In many of the bathhouses, the customer would get a bucket full of hot water at the entrance to use in the bathhouse, as there was no running water inside. And what about more modern times? At the beginning of the 20th century in the United States, bathing was much less common than it is today, and without running water, it was much more difficult to attain good personal hygiene. Generally, people would take a bath once a week at most, and they would wash in the same water as the rest of their family. According to historian Catherine Aschenberg, the metal bathtub would be pulled into the kitchen and filled with warm water on a Saturday night. The father would get in first and wash, then everyone else in order of importance.
Historically, then, the importance of hygiene and the way of attaining it has changed a lot. What standards of hygiene, I wonder, will future generations have? And what will they think of our washing habits now?
In the 19th century, Americans had a different concept of what it meant to be clean. They often didn't have running water. They didn't have flush toilets. When you don't have easy running water, the kind of cleanliness you can attain is limited. So people would wash in a basin. They might use some soap that grandma had made with some lye. But they did not have an easy time of it, keeping their bodies or their homes clean. And they certainly didn't have shelves full of products designed to help them stay hygienically pure.
Basically, life for many people was just dirty. But starting around the 1820s, people start realizing that living in filth wasn't so good for their health.
Infectious diseases began to go up in number in the United States in the 1800s, particularly in large cities.
Then scientific evidence started showing that microscopic organisms, or germs, often found in dirty homes and cities, were the cause of disease.
This acceptance of the germ theory of disease was slow to come because it depended on a belief that something you couldn't see was making you sick. Oddly enough, enthusiasm for the germ theory did not come from the medical profession, but from advertisers of products. The commodification of the germ theory of disease kind of came in two waves. The first phase was in the 1880s and into the 1890s around toilets.
Some of the early products that were sold to protect people from those germs included water filters and plumbing innovations. Some really fancy ones, too.
Phase two follows research that shows the spread of germs through personal contact, coughing, spitting, sneezing. They realize that that person-to-person contact is significant in the spread of very deadly diseases.
Advertisers jumped on this and used those concerns to sell furniture.
When you look at interior decorating in this time period, you can see a massive shift away from the Victorian to a more clean kind of style. So instead of buying a velvet chair, you would want to buy a wicker chair that could be more easily cleaned. You would want to have hardwood floors and not carpets that couldn't be taken out because rugs were very, very bad. Rugs that you could not take out and beat. Very, very bad.
Of course, when you have all this swanky new furniture, you have to make sure it's clean and germ-free. And advertisers were more than ready to sell their cleaning products. And they sold them just about any way they could, even by co-opting someone's name.
Listerine antiseptic, the most widely used antiseptic in the world, kills germs instantly.
Listerine is named after Joseph Lister, who was a surgeon who really cut down on post-surgery infections. So if you were going to name a product after someone, Lister was a good choice. He had no control over this. Those were the days when you could appropriate someone's name without asking them.
So overnight, the Lister name went from hospitals to store shelves.
To ward off colds, gargle with that Listerine and protect yourself. There was nothing in your life that Listerine couldn't be used to make better.
Advertisers also targeted people's insecurities, claiming, for instance, that their mouthwash could help you with your social life. And people totally bought it. By selling cleaning products, furniture, and toilets, advertisers helped make homes cleaner and move the needle in improving public health, all while making a buck.